WNST Live, as well as our YouTube WNST TV channel. You can see that I am wearing my UMBC swag very proudly, and much like this guy, our ties to UMBC go back to when they had other sponsors and played in the old arena, and 3 or 4 coaches ago, and back to Tom Sullivan. This guy is a man about town. He's done sports radio here. He's been on the field for Ravens games for 20 years in various capacities and on our radio station as well as other radio stations. He is currently the Director of Communications for the Ed Block Courage Awards Foundation, which we love so much around here. And he is also a UMBC insider. And I guess Paul Mittermeier, I'll tell everybody to follow you at P. Mittermeier on Twitter. And I know you got many friends around town here. This UMBC thing and the insider part of UMBC, I'm thinking, who can I bring on to talk about UMBC? There aren't a whole lot of people that go to a whole lot of UMBC games. You, Gary Stein, John Feinstein, Rob Kennedy. Other than that, Steve Levy's there. He works there. But, it has been, over the course of 20 years, a place where a couple of us go out a couple times a year, but there are a couple of you that are there a whole lot. And this has to mean the world to you, Paul.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch what they've been able to accomplish over, the last week. Think about this, Nestor. You're right. You talk about the RAC Arena, and they draw about 1,500 people, 2,000 people on a good day. They had a nice little run back in 07, 08, but it's been a long time. And it's been pretty amazing to see what Ryan Odom has done since he's come in over the last 2 years. And it gets back to me again, Nestor. It's just how big coaching is and how important coaching is in sports. And I think we've seen that with the run that UMBC has made. It's been fascinating to watch just how much attention they've gotten over the last week. It's been amazing.
Well, I think all day Saturday, the thing happened late Friday night. The tournament didn't have big time Cinderellas going on early on, and that game happens in prime time. I thought to myself, what did Vegas look like? I mean, look, I fell asleep on this thing like everyone else, Paul. Right? I mean, Maryland wasn't going to be in the tournament. We realized that. Towson was fading. There was always a thought of UMBC. I mean, I talked to Rob Kennedy every week. You've seen me down at the RAC this year. You've seen me down at the new arena. We have Ryan on from time to time, and they were the best hope, I thought. Maybe outside of Navy had a hope to be in the tournament. But even if they got in the tournament, I'm like, they're going to be a 15 or a 16, and they're going to see Duke or Villanova or whomever they're going to see, and what's their opportunity to win? And I had Feinstein on for half an hour last week, and I think everybody would poo-poo a 16 beating a 1 on the face of it, because as I said all last week, I used the old Smokey and the Bandit line, Paul. I said, it ain't never been done because we ain't never done it, and
right.
And they did it, and Saturday was the fascinating part, right? I was at the Caps game Friday night. I had Judas Priest Sunday night. I had a charity event, Be More Humane Saturday. I had a charity event Thursday night with the National Kidney Foundation. I sort of filled my weekend up, and I guess I could have gone down to Charlotte, but the notion was, go down to Charlotte, watch them lose 77-49 or whatever it's going to be, because that's usually the way it is. But for Friday night, when that thing happened, all day Saturday, it wasn't just my timeline or Facebook or people that know that I wear a UMBC shirt from time to time, and Pete Carinci and I are buddies, and they've been involved with our charity and leukemia swabbing and all that. I think that the big picture of it was every morning show on Saturday morning, every news show, every reference. On Twitter, people that don't even reference sports were referencing UMBC because it's the ultimate. It's the greatest upset in the history of college basketball, and I don't know what that's going to do for the campus or what that's going to do for Ryan Odom's life or Jarris Lyle's life or, for any of these guys, but I know for that one moment in time, as Cal Ripken and Whitney Houston would say, for one weekend, they were the lead story in the universe. They were the trending top story in all of Twitter over Trump, man,
Yeah, just to expand on that, Nestor, I was getting calls from all of my friends around the country who were trying to get a hold of the Twitter guy for UMBC, or just trying to get some information. I did an interview with the New York Times. They did a story on the team. It transcended sports for Saturday. It wasn't just about sports anymore. It was about
an underdog. Yeah,
in life, the underdog in life, and that was the pretty amazing part about it. I agree with you, Nestor. I don't know what it's going to do for the team. The cynic in me starts to think, well, how does Ryan Odom? How is he the coach of UMBC next year? How is some major college basketball team not going to try to hire him away? And those things start to go through your mind, but they'll always have that. And to your point about that, no matter what happens moving forward, every time a 16-1 game is close, you'll see the video of UMBC beating Virginia. And that's going to be ingrained in NCAA basketball coverage for the next 20, 30 years.
Well, Luke said earlier, if they're going to do 30 for 30s on that, I mean, that's going to be a story that it ain't never been done because we ain't never done it. Ain't nobody ever going to do it again. I mean, it's going to be a long time coming. We're not going to be 3 years from now seeing a 16 beat a 1. The sport's still too lopsided, and the whole notion, and by the way, Zach Seidel's going to join us this week. I'm sure I'm going to track down Steve Levy. I'm hoping to track down Feinstein again, and I had people calling me courtside from Charlotte on Sunday night when I was down at Judas Priest saying, I want to come on and talk to you about this weekend. Everybody wants to talk about UMBC, but there are very, very few people like you who have literally been there for practices and know the guys' names and know the 7th and 8th guys on the bench and seeing them move from one arena to another and knowing what turmoil that sort of brought to everything on the campus where the players hadn't even been in the building and they're playing games in there, and then the building got they didn't flush the toilets in there, and 4 weeks ago, Super Bowl weekend, Super Bowl Sunday, they're opening the place. And, it's been a wild, wild ride for everyone there, from campus administration to even President Rabowski. I mean, he became a central figure for politics over the weekend. I mean, it's really a great story for UMBC, and I hope that somehow, some way, this benefits them because Baltimore needs something good.
Yeah, absolutely. You just get expand on that point, Nestor. They had a pretty good team this year coming in. They play in the RAC. They win every single game in the RAC arena that they play this year, including 2 really good non-conference teams. They beat Northern Kentucky, a 1-point game that went down to the wire, and they had some great wins. And then they move over to the new event center, and they had to open it this year. They open it against Vermont, and they lose one of the worst losses of the entire season. They get beat by 38 points to Vermont on that day. And they end up losing 2 of their first 3 in the building. And you're like, oh my gosh, why? That's so unfortunate you had to move over to here. And, after you had such a good thing going at the RAC, but then they kind of run the ship. And this is how much of a thin line Nestor, the sports is. They were down 12 to UMass Lowell in the first round of the American East tournament at home, and had to come back and win that game in the second half just to keep going to have a chance to make the tournament. It's just insane sometimes how things work out.
Well, the Lyle shot at Vermont, right? Like I said to my wife over the weekend, somewhere the guys in Vermont are saying there never should have been a UMBC. All you got to do is guard their best player at the top of the key with 4 seconds left, and there is no UMBC, but Paul Mittermeier is our guest, of course. You know him from Ravens games and radio and UMBC, and you've done television down there with UMBC. Wait, you mentioned Ryan Odom and the difference, and obviously Lyles and this incredible relationship, which was also an incredible story, with the president of the university. Being around it this year, they lost badly to Towson early in the year. You know what I mean? And I think that was one of those things where you're like, at that point in the year, Towson certainly looked like the powerhouse team here locally around the Beltway. It's amazing how that loss, I think, if you go back and we'll talk to Ryan, that probably turned some things for them, right? A little bit.
A little bit. I think, yes, and it's interesting you say that because, when you looked at the RPI early in the season, Towson was like 40 or 50 in RPI when the non-conference season was going on. And that they did beat UMBC last year, but that was interesting. That game, that was a very physical game. I think UMBC had a 1-point lead with 6 minutes left, and then Towson just wore them down and beat them in that game. But it was one of those, it was kind of one of those things that was kind of typical for this year for UMBC. When they had to play physical games against physical teams, they struggled a little bit. But when they were able to play and get out of the transition and shoot the basketball, that's when they had their most success. And but yeah, back to your point, it was crazy how it all turned. And Towson kind of like went down the slope a little bit towards the end of the year, and UMBC picked it up. But it just goes to show you, because you look at the national level too, Nestor. You look at the teams that were in the top 5 at the end of the year. Some of them aren't around anymore, and a lot of the teams that were like Texas A&M was a top 5 team early on, and then struggled a little bit. But now look where they are. So it's always tough to kind of figure out how a college basketball season is going to go. And I always was a big believer of this too. It's about how you're playing at the end of the season as opposed to maybe what you were doing early in the year. And the team that gets hot at the end usually has the most success.
Well, and I guess in the case of UMBC, we could talk about the win against Vermont, which, it was its own shocker, right? But the beatdown of Virginia, and in talking, I talked to Luke about this earlier, just sort of like they stole the will of Virginia, right? Even when it was 8 minutes left to go in the game and they're up 16 or whatever it was at the time, you thought, well, they're still going to have a run. They're still going to have to, and the announcers felt that way. The crowd felt that way. I think anybody that's ever watched the 16-1 realizes this is the best team, in the country. It has been and has proven that over 4.5 months, that they're going to have something in them. And really, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and it's still 16 points, you started to see them take the will away. And that was an amazing thing to see. And I think for those who witnessed it, that's another part of that David Goliath thing, that ultimate underdog thing, that Virginia was a little cocky. They were the 1 seed. They're going to have this hanging on them forever. They lost to UCMB. And, people don't even know what the hell they were. So, that they're going to have that, and they had to get back on the bus and go back to Charlottesville, and they're going to have that on them. But for Sunday night, and maybe this goes back to Fang Mitchell in '97, and by the way, I know you were a part of the old WLG at that time too, because I have pictures in the studio, and Fang brought all the kids in, and we illegally fed them pizza, which I found out years later was an NCAA violation. But I remember Fang was so despondent because they had a chance to beat Texas, right? And I think in the case of UMBC, and I think the hardest part for Ryan on Monday morning will be waking up and saying, we shot what? We missed free throws? How many open looks did we get? I know they collapsed on Lyles, but we had looks, we had shots. They were awful, 1 for 12, 13, whatever it was from the 3. How did we lose that game? How are we not still playing in Atlanta this week? I think there's a basketball side of that on the inside that is a little heartbreaking because they had a chance to win Sunday night. It's one thing when you get your ass kicked, but when you had a chance to win, that's going to be hard in the near short-term future for them because it was sitting there for them Sunday night.
No question. But I've seen them do that this year, though. They just struggle to shoot the basketball sometimes. But the biggest difference, obviously, down the stretch was they just played great defense, and they really bought in this year to playing on the defensive end of the floor. Nestor, let's get back to the whole thing, though, of you talk about improbabilities. Let's talk about the whole run itself, and let's start with that Vermont situation because Vermont had beaten UMBC 23 straight times before that game. 23 straight times. And let's not sugarcoat it. It wasn't like, oh, man, we lost to Vermont by 5, or we just can't get over the hump. Some of those games were like 40, 30, 35, like UMBC was out of the game in the first 5 minutes. They had never, ever really even competed on that level for 10 years, for 23 straight games. Last year was close. They got down early at home, and then they rallied, and they used the press to get within like 5 or 6. But Nestor,
we're talking Cleveland Browns beating the Steelers in Pittsburgh kind of craziness, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then they win that game. And then here's the other aspect. We could possibly see, you go another 100 games or whatever, and you might see a 16 knock off of 1. I guarantee you could play basketball for 200 more years, and you ain't going to see a 16 beat a 1 by 20. That's just never going to happen again. And that's just the crazy aspect of what they did. And it all comes down to the mental side of sports in that you look at the faces on the kids of Virginia when they got down double digits, and they just panicked, and they didn't want to shoot, and they were taking bad shots, and it was just they were just done. They were just mentally done. No chance they were going to win that game because they had mentally just shut down. And it's just an amazing story.
Paul Mittermeier can be found out on Twitter at P. Mittermeier, as well as at the Ed Block Courage Awards Foundation. I trust you had a very successful event a couple of weeks ago, correct?
Another amazing couple days. The visits at Rita Church downtown with the Baltimore City kids, and then the visit to St. Vincent's was amazing. Touching more lives on both ends, Nestor, not just the kids, but when the NFL players getting in here watching and just seeing how they are just taken aback by everything that happens. And it's just another great event.
Well, I tell you what, I was following along as well out on social media with so many of the folks coming in for that. And you got a date for next year yet or no?
March 23rd, I believe, is the event. We're going to push it back a couple weeks next year, and I believe if that's the Saturday night next year, the 23rd, it's that weekend of March next year.
That'll be the night that UMBC's beating Duke next year, right?
That might be true. I didn't think about that.
Got to give it to you. I got to give you a hard time on that. Hey, man, congrats on your success with UMBC. You have been amongst you and Gary out there with the shovels, digging dirt. You're making the new arena happen. And to your point, and it begins the conversation. We go back to the beginning, which is, boy, Ryan Odom might not be here long because we've seen this, right? But I tell you what, and this will be a tribute to him wherever he goes, because I will assume at some point he'll be coaching a major university somewhere at some point, that UMBC will be left in a much better place with the arena and all that the program is now on the map. To your point, I hadn't even thought about every year they're going to say, remember that time that UMBC beat them, like Chaminade. I don't know anything about Chaminade except that I remember they beat Ralph Sampson in the middle of the night 35 years ago,
Yep.
Well,
crazy.
It's going to help UMBC moving forward. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, it's been an amazing ride. It's nice to see. They deserve it. Charlie Brown, the former athletic director there for 25 years, did an outstanding job. You really love sports, and they just were able to catch lightning in a bottle with Ryan Odom, who's a magnificent coach. And
Zach Seidel wasn't bad either. He might have been as good as Lyles, right?
He was the best. He was the best. I couldn't get over Seth Davis's tweet when it was 5-3 talking about a Virginia win. That was just crazy, and that's what started the whole thing. And Zach called him out on it, and then he just took off from there all weekend. It was amazing.
Good times, it was fun, and I know it was disappointing on Sunday night, but I hope they come back and put the gold Cinderella slipper on and enjoy it for a long, long time, and I'll be having them all on. I'll find Coringi. I'll find out where everybody was and how they were all enjoying it over there, one by one, but you're the first victim to step forward to be on the program here to talk about all the success of UMBC, so I hope that they screw up your event next year when they're beating Duke in the middle of your Ed Block Awards on March 23rd. How about that?
That would be incredible.
And Towson will be out at Boise knocking off Villanova or somebody, right?
Right.
See you soon, bud. Be well.
All right.
You got it. Paul Mittermeier, P. Mittermeier, doing great works and great things with the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation, and one of my former colleagues and longtime associate here in and around town, and, of course, an inspiration, his own story, especially if you've ever seen him play soccer in goal. You'll know what I'm talking about at one of those blast games. Go find him, P. Mittermeier, out on Twitter and anywhere UMBC basketball is served as well. We're honoring UMBC. I'm wearing my UMBC shirt. You followed the story all weekend long. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank. A relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches throughout Baltimore and Maryland. The unique hands-on approach to banking. Go find them online at howardbank.com, and they are coming to your neighborhood if they're not already there. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. I got the coffee in the Kona blend this morning. Make sure you're downloading the app. And when you're gassing up, use that app. You get your points. You'll start getting some free Western fries and some free fried chicken right around the corner just for pumping up and using the app. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning, free of charge, and brought to you by Planet Fitness, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. This bad weather's going to get behind us. We're going to have good weather ahead. Get inside. Get yourself in the best shape of your life. Go to Planet Fitness and Planet of Triumphs to get a little inspiration as well. Our morning newspaper also features the daily racing entries at Laurel. They're racing at Laurel right now. They're moving to Pimlico in about 6 or 7 weeks. We'll have you ready for the Pink weekend as well as the Preakness weekend coming up at the Maryland Jockey Club, our partner here at WNST.net. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And if you need breaking news, it's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. It is our WNST tech service. Sign up for that. When Ryan Grant's a Raven, you'll get it. When Ryan Grant's not a Raven, you'll get it. When Michael Crabtree signs, you get it. When UMBC gets seeded to go to Charlotte and play Virginia, you get it. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.